Thank you and good morning. Today is June 2nd. We have the Committee on Licenses and Inspections. Before we begin the public hearing, I will make the following announcement. Due to continuing threat of public health from COVID-19, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We're using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, the Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearing can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I will now note that the hour has come. Mr. McMonagle, can you please call the roll, take attendance of the members that are in attendance? Please indicate that you are here. Mr. McMonagle?
Councilman Dom?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and colleagues.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Councilman Johnson?
Hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, the Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearing can also be found on Ida. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Johnson? Councilman Jones?
Present.
Councilman O?
Present.
Councilman Squilla?
Present.
Councilwoman Gim?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Thank you all. A quorum of the committee is now present and the hearing is now called to order. This is a public hearing of the Committee on License and Inspection regarding bills number 220415, 220008, and 220348. I would like to 220384. Apologize. I would like to note for the record that the bill number 210886 is being held at, I'm having a little dyslexia today. Bill number 210868 is being held with the sponsor at the sponsor's request. Mr. Monagle, will you please read the title of the bills?
Bill number 220415, an ordinance amending section A-703.2 of Title IV of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Special Certificate of Inspection, to include satisfaction of certain plumbing facilities and fixture requirements as means of certifying compliance with certain water quality requirements for issuance of special certificates of inspection, all under certain terms and conditions. And bill number 220384, an ordinance amending Title IV of the Philadelphia Building Code entitled the Philadelphia Building Construction and Occupancy Code to amend provisions relating to allowable time extensions on a construction permit, all under certain terms and conditions. And bill number 220008, an ordinance amending Title IV of the Philadelphia Code entitled the Philadelphia Building Construction and Occupancy Code to revise and add provisions relating to investigations concerning property adjacent to or adjoining certain construction activities, and the provision of notice to owners and residents of such properties, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you, Mr. McMonagle. And again, happy birthday today, and thank you for working so hard on your birthday. We appreciate it. Before we begin our hearing and testimony, the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that the public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for the questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note for the record, at this time, we will be using the chat feature available on Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Before we call the panel, we'd like to have a brief comment from Councilmember Gim.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much. Happy birthday, Sean. Thank you for all your work on behalf of the committee. So I am talking a little bit about bill number 220415. We circulated a memo to members of the committee that bill number 220415 is a complement to the hydration stations legislation Bill 220221 that was recently reported out of this committee with a favorable recommendation on May 19th. The current bill 220415 does something that I don't think we do nearly enough of, which is to clean up regulations and relieve entities, private and public, of, well, let me clarify that, charter schools and public schools, of some of the responsibilities of testing that were required under previous legislation. So specifically, this companion bill removes a water testing requirement for water fountains once that educational facility, which is a public school or charter school, complies with the new proposed standards and installs the modern water fountains that are equipped with the advanced filtration systems that were specified in the previous bill 220221. So these advanced filters have demonstrated consistently that they are effective in reducing lead levels to barely detectable, less than 1 part per billion. And we believe that annual city inspections on the filters will ensure that they are working properly. So there's no need for schools, school districts, and school systems then to have to pay for additional testing every 5 years. So again, this legislation will ease compliance for schools and is supported by the district and water safety advocates, alongside as a complement to the earlier bill 220221 that would modernize all water fountains. Unfortunately for the committee, our single testifier was not able to testify today. So that is Emma Horst-Marta, who is an advocate for Penberg. So she will be submitting written testimony in support, as has the School District of Philadelphia. So there are no in-person panel testifiers to this bill, Mr. Chair. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Member, and it's a credit to you and the work you have done, because you know how sometimes controversial some of this legislation is. So to have no testifiers, that means that all the work behind the scenes was done, and we really appreciate that. And we do have, for the record, the school district's testimony in support of a legislation in Bill number 220415. Is there anyone else to testify on that bill? Or do we have any other questions? Seeing none, great job, Councilmember Gim, and we really appreciate all the work you've done to make sure our water is safe in all our school buildings. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a quick note.
Sure.
So we circulated testimony in favor of the bill from the original testifier, Emma Horst-Marta, who just couldn't make the current time with the delay. But thank you very much.
Yes, and we apologize. Our commerce and hearing went a little over. We tried to get this as first and have her testify. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. So thank you, and we will note that for the record and add her testimony. Mr. McMonigal, can you please call the next panel for bill number 220384?
Yes, can we please have Sarah Adamo from Licenses and Inspections?
Sarah, thank you for being here. Just state your name for the record, and then you can proceed with your testimony.
Good morning, Chairperson Squilla and members of the Licenses and Inspections Committee. My name is Sarah Adamo, and I am the Legislative Affairs Manager for the Department of Licenses and Inspections. I am here to provide testimony on bill number 220384, which, if enacted, will amend Title IV of the Philadelphia Code, entitled the Philadelphia Building Construction and Occupancy Code, to amend provisions relating to allowable time extensions on a construction permit, all under certain terms and conditions. Currently, work that is authorized by the majority of permits issued by L&I must commence within 6 months of the issuance of the permit. If the work does not begin within 6 months, the permit holder may request one 6-month extension. If enacted, this bill will authorize L&I to grant 2 6-month extensions on applicable permits for a total period not exceeding 12 months. Although the flexibility to issue a second extension on permits would be beneficial under typical conditions, L&I believes that it is necessary in the coming months due to the record high number of permits that were issued in 2021. If construction were to begin on those permits within a short window, it would put a strain on the surrounding communities. Furthermore, supply chain challenges have created substantial delays on construction, authorizing the department Authorizing the department to extend these building permits may be necessary in some cases where the alternative would be that the permit would lapse or work would need to begin and proceed slowly in order to keep the permit open. The department is supportive of this bill and is prepared to enforce its provisions should it become law. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the department's testimony. I am happy to answer questions at this time.
Thank you, thank you, Sarah, for your testimony. Is there any members of council that has any questions? I just have one quick question. Do you believe that additional staffing at L&I will allow the department to be able to better address the needs of these permits in a timely manner? Or do you think because of the issues with COVID and other things, it's just really something that we're not able to do?
Currently, based on the number of building inspectors that we have, we do expect to be able to meet the needs of inspection for these permits that have been issued. Our greater concern really is that, like we all know, there are certain pockets of the city where development is more prevalent than others. So we're concerned more so that, if you have 10 construction projects going on within a couple block radius of your home, that's really disruptive. So to be able to space these projects out a little bit is very beneficial for the community.
Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any other questions from members of council? Seeing none, thank you. Next bill we have is 22008. Mr. Monagle, can you please read the next person to testify?
Sarah Adamo, please.
Sarah, please proceed.
Good morning, Chairperson Squilla and members of the Licenses and Inspections Committee. My name is Sarah Adamo, and I am the Legislative Affairs Manager for the Department of Licenses and Inspections. I am here to provide testimony on Bill number 220008, which, if enacted, will amend Title IV of the Philadelphia Code entitled the Philadelphia Building, Construction, and Occupancy Code, to revise and add provisions related to investigations concerning property adjacent to or adjoining certain construction activities, and the provision of notice to owners and residents of such properties, all under certain terms and conditions.
And first,
the objective of the legislation is to increase the protection of adjacent properties while construction is underway, and provide notification to adjacent property owners prior to the start of specific types of construction. If enacted, this bill will codify the following changes. First, it will expand the requirement for structural observation and special inspections to include any modification to a party wall, including demolition, joist replacement, and additions. Next, it will expand the requirement for notification to adjacent property owners. It will also require receipt of notice of adjacent property owners with the permit application. And lastly, it will permit temporary protection of structures from the weather for a maximum of 60 days. The department has no objection to this bill and has worked with the bill sponsor on the proposed amendment. We are prepared to enforce the bill's provisions should it become law. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the department's testimony. I am happy to answer questions at this time.
Sarah, thank you so much for your testimony. And I do want to also thank L&I, who has been working with us. And also, this has been in a process for a while, knowing that we needed state review. And now that state review was completed, we're allowed to have this hearing. So also want to thank CLS and also our stakeholders, especially Venice Whitaker from Council President Clark's office has also been very engaged in this process and has really stewarded this legislation through. Again, we know that this is just a starting place. It's something we know the challenges out there of construction with adjoining neighbors damage that has been done to properties that we often end up being a civil matter, and sometimes we, as a city, do not provide any protections. This will be a start, coordinating with Rep. Hohenstein's legislation in the state. It's really important to be able to have residents know what is available to them, what their rights are, and then what is expected from developers who are causing damage to these adjoining properties. So again, this is just a start, and we're hoping to build off this. But hopefully, once this passes out of committee and goes to a full council and becomes law, we can continue to work on enhancing this legislation to make it even stronger. So thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions for Ellen and I before we go to the next group of testifiers? Hearing none, thank you so much. We'd like to introduce and thank Representative Joe Hohenstein for being here today, and also for his legislation that he has introduced in the state to also deal with a lot of these concerns we're having across our city and really across the country. So the first person to testify will have State Rep. Joe Hohenstein. Joe, just state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
All right. Thank you, Chair Squilla. I am Joe Hohenstein. I'm the state representative for House District 177, which has my neighborhood, where I'm from, Frankfurt, along with parts of Tacony, Wissinoming, Bridesburg, Port Richmond, Fishtown. And I am very pleased to see this bill coming forward right now from Councilmember Squilla, and to have it be considered and moved here in Philly. I have similar legislation that is pending at the state level regarding how our neighbors and for me and my neighborhoods, if you think the quintessential Philadelphia row homes, you're thinking places like Port Richmond and Fishtown in particular. These are structures that were houses all built together. They rely on each other in a physical sense, just the same way that the neighbors who live in them rely on each other in the neighborhood. And so making sure that a bill is put into place, or a policy is put in place to give these adjacent neighbors the rights and information about what they can do to keep the physical space of their home safe and secure is key. So I really appreciate you bringing this forward. I want to make one other point as well. This is about responsible development, and I've actually had some folks who are engaged as what I would call good developers, good builders, who are paying attention to the impact that they have on their neighborhoods. And those folks are in support of this type of legislation just as much as the people who live in the house as my neighbors and my constituents. And then finally, I came about 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago, with the story of one of my constituents, Tommy Munzo, who has gone through an ordeal dealing with exactly this kind of issue with his adjacent neighbors. And we are 2 years later, and Mr. Munzo is still having some of those very same issues and problems. So this type of legislation that's going to help neighbors to be accountable to each other, help protect the physical structures of that make up our neighborhoods is something that I think is overdue, and I'm glad to see it. And I'm hoping when time comes for us to push this along with some of the other improvements that we've got to make at the state level, that I'll have some of you guys be able to come up to Harrisburg and testify on that package of bills that I have. So once again, thank you to Chair Squilla and to everyone who's been advocating on this bill, and also to L&I for their position to be prepared to enforce it when it does become law.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much for your testimony and partnership on this. I mean, it's important to have the ability to work with the state that allows the city to also do their own regulations. And, without your initial legislation, we wouldn't be able to move forward on a lot of these things. So we appreciate your continued work to help and support the community. And I think that, as we all work together, again, knowing that this is still a work in progress, this will be a living, breathing document that we could continue to change. But we know we need to start somewhere, and we need to do it as soon as possible so that we can continue to advocate for our residents who are being negatively impacted by some of the construction that's happening. So thank you so much for your testimony, and thank you for what you're doing.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Rep. Hohenstein with his bill? Seeing none. Mr. McGonigal, can you please read the next person testify?
Yes, can we please have Migdalia Mendez, who will need Spanish interpretation? And there's the interpreter. Thank you very much for your assistance.
Can you hear us?
We hear you fine. Yes, state your names for the testimony, and then you could proceed with your testimony.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Migdalia Mendez.
Good morning, my name is Migdalia Mendez.
Vivo en el 415 West Houston, 19122.
I live at 415 West Houston, Philadelphia, 19122.
Por 33 años.
For the last 33 years.
Quisiera hablar sobre cuando empezaron la construcción en el edificio 413 West Houston.
I would like to talk about when they started the construction at 413 West Houston.
Es el edificio que queda al lado de mi casa.
That is the building that is adjacent to my house.
Yo estuve viviendo en este bloque por casi 30 años y era la única casa que había completamente en el bloque.
I have been living at this house for almost 30 years, and the whole time, my house has been the only house on that block.
Yo era la que los mantenía a los 5 bloques, yo era la que mantenía, los 5 loteras, yo era la que los mantenía limpios, que el city no tenía que venir a limpiarlo.
I was the person who would clean 5 lots. The city did not have to come out and clean.
Estuve luchando el 413 y el 417 en Market Street, pero siempre que iba me decían que no le pertenecía a la ciudad.
I was fighting to obtain the title of 413 and 417 West Houston at 1234 Market Street, but they always told me that it did not belong to the city.
En el 2018 pusieron el aviso en la cerca porque yo lo tenía cercado para mantenerlo limpio.
In 2018, they put up a sign saying that it was going to go up for auction. I had a fence around the property to maintain it clean.
Mis 2 hijas mayores fueron a la subasta.
My 2 older daughters went to the auction.
Pero hubo un señor que sobrepasó el budget que ella tenía.
But there was a man who outbid my daughters with the budget that they had.
Un día vino el señor a tocarme la puerta para que sacara la cerca.
One day, the man came and knocked on my door, telling me to remove the fence.
Porque él lo había comprado en la subasta.
Because he had purchased it in the auction.
Yo me puse a chequear en el website del city y él lo compró por $5,500.
I checked on the city website and I saw that he had purchased it for $5,500.
Y se lo vendieron al developer por $60,000.
And he sold it to a developer for $60,000.
Al par de meses vinieron a medir el lote.
A few months later, they came to measure the lot.
y empezaron a romper en el piso.
and they started to break ground.
Yo tuve muchos problemas cuando empezaron a romper porque me rompieron una pared que yo tenía.
I had a lot of problems when they started construction because they broke one of my walls.
Y yo llamé a License Inspection,
I called licenses and inspections.
vinieron como a los 4 meses
Like 4 months later, they came.
y le expliqué todos los problemas que había tenido
Explained all the problems that I had had.
y lo que él me dijo fue que hablara con el dueño de la casa.
And what he told me was to speak to the owner of the house.
Y vi al dueño y
I saw the owner
le dije que me había hecho demasiado daño en el basement
and I told him that they had done a lot of damage to my basement.
la pared de mi cuarto me está craqueada
That wall in my bedroom was cracked
y el basement está completamente destrozado.
and that my basement is completely destroyed.
Volví a llamar a License Inspection
I called licenses and inspections again,
y mandaron a un inspector simplemente para saber si yo estaba bien en mi casa.
and they sent an inspector just to see if I was safe in my house.
Le enseñé todos los daños desde el basement, todos los retratos que yo tengo.
I showed him all of the damage to the basement as well as all the photographs I have.
Y él me dijo que la casa me la habían sacado de la fundación.
And he told me that had knocked my house off its foundation.
Y me dijo que chequeara las rajaduras, los cracks que me habían hecho en las paredes, porque es adentro y fuera de la casa.
And he told me to check the cracks in the walls because there were cracks inside and on the outside of the house.
Y que no llamara al 911, que lo llamara directo a él.
And to not call 911, to call him directly.
Y que chequeara todo y yo chequeé abogados a ver si podía demandar.
And that I should be checking everything. I looked into getting a lawyer to see if I could sue.
Pero no hay abogado que los quiera demandar.
But I have not found any lawyer that is willing to sue them.
Me recomendaron a uno.
I was recommended to a lawyer.
Y lo llamé y le expliqué el problema.
I called him and explained the problem.
Me pidió de down payment $7,000.
He asked for a down payment of initial retainer of $7,000
y $300 la hora.
and $300 an hour.
Y yo le dije que si yo tuviera ese dinero, yo por lo menos empezaba a arreglar poco a poco mi casa.
And I told him if I had that kind of money, I would start fixing my house.
Por eso
over time.
estoy luchando los únicos 2 lotes que quedan.
That's why I'm fighting for the only 2 lots that are there.
Es el 417 y el 419.
417 and 419.
Y ya el 417 hubo un developer que fue a hablar con la familia de los dueños.
And for 417, a developer already went and spoke to the family that owns it.
Y lo tenían ya para la venta.
And it's for sale.
Y él me dijo, yo hablé con él, me dijo que él lo iba a comprar.
And he told me he was going to buy it.
Pero estaban pidiendo mucho dinero.
But that they were asking for too much money.
Ahora no lo iba a comprar.
And so is no longer going to buy it.
Y como el lote tiene una demanda.
Perdón?
El lote tiene una demanda.
There is a lien or a lawsuit against the lot.
Y él me preguntó que por qué.
And he asked me why.
Y yo le dije por el problema que había tenido con el 413, todos los daños que me hicieron.
And I told him about all the damage that I had from the work at 413.
Y él me dijo que por qué no me iba para los suburbs o para New Jersey a vivir.
¿Por qué no fuera a suburbs or New
Que por
Jersey?
qué no me iba a vivir en los suburbs o en New Jersey.
And he said, why don't you go live in the suburbs or New Jersey?
Y yo le dije que yo estoy viviendo en este mismo sector por 43 años.
And I said, I've been living in this neighborhood for 43 years.
Y que de mi casa no me van a sacar.
And nobody's getting me out of making me leave my house.
Por eso es que estoy luchando el lote, porque si hacen otra casa, voy a perder mi casa.
And that's why I'm fighting for that lot, because if they make another construction, I'm going to lose my house.
Y yo no puedo pagar renta o pagar otro mortgage porque mi casa está limpiecita de todo.
I cannot afford to pay another mortgage or rent because I own my house outright.
Y aquí fue donde yo crié a mis hijos.
This is where I raised my family, my children.
So, por lo menos, ya que ese bill no me va a ayudar a mí porque ya van casi 3 años.
I know that this bill is not going to help me at this point because this has been going on for 3 years.
Pero sí le puede ayudar a otras personas que están pasando por lo que yo estoy pasando.
But it could help other people that are going through this.
Porque mi tía perdió la casa por un developer.
My aunt lost her house due to a developer.
El city se la tumbó.
The city had to knock her house down.
Y le mandaron el bill a ella.
And they sent her the bill.
A una señora de más de 80 años.
A woman who was old, more than 80 years old.
Y ahora lo que está es rentando.
And now she's renting.
Y le pasó lo mismo que a mí, no consiguió abogado.
And the same thing happened to her. She was unable to obtain an attorney.
Por eso quisiera que ayudaran.
That's why I would like your help.
Y no, que no estén pasando por lo mismo que yo estoy pasando, porque en invierno mi casa es demasiado fría.
And another thing that's happening is that now in the winter, my house is extremely cold.
Y cuando hace demasiado viento, si es de noche.
And if there's a lot of wind, like at night, if there's a lot of wind,
mi cama tiembla.
My bed shakes.
So, por eso yo tengo miedo de que esas rajaduras se vayan a abrir.
And so I'm afraid that these cracks are going to open more.
Y del basement, el developer me dijo que eso era de adentro, no, que no había sido culpa de ellos.
In my basement, the developer said that it was coming from my basement. It wasn't their fault.
Y yo le dije que yo había arreglado ese basement hacía 5 años.
I told him that I had my basement repaired 5 years ago.
Y hasta la fecha de hoy no lo he vuelto a ver.
And I've never seen that, pero no ha vuelto a ver el developer?
Sí.
To date, I've never seen that developer again.
Por eso les pido que si me pueden ayudar con los 2 lotes que quedan.
That's why I'm asking if you could help me with the 2 remaining lots.
Para entonces poder pasar lo que me queda de vida en mi casa.
So that I can spend the rest of my life in my own home.
Le agradezco mucho por haberme prestado su atención.
I thank you very much for giving me your time and attention.
Y espero que ese bill lo puedan pasar.
I hope that you can pass that bill.
Muchas gracias y que tengan un lindo día.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful, beautiful day.
Gracias. Thank you so much. for your
Gracias, señora.
Gracias a usted también.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, I see your shirt there. Sorry, I'm late. I need to get one of them because everybody.
Le gusta mucho la camiseta diciendo disculpa que he llegado tarde. No quería estar aquí. Él quisiera tener esa camiseta. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
That's great.
Okay.
But I also want to say a couple things to Miss Gonzalez Mendez. The lots that she's talking to, if you could let her know to email me, I could connect her to the council person in that area to see what we could do to start that other process. But you could see why it's so important to have this legislation, at least start this legislation, to get what is needed to help residents that are being negatively impacted by this construction. And you could hear from her what she had said. You know, some of these developers who take it like that you're being a nuisance to them when you own your property and they're damaging your property. So we appreciate it because what her testimony did is actually give us more of a reason to continue to work on this legislation and pass this out.
Gracias por su testimonio.
Con permiso,
Yo quiero que usted se pone en contacto conmigo directamente, así puedo yo conectarle a usted al concejal de ese área. Y su testimonio nos ha dado más evidencia de los daños que están haciendo estos construcciones para los vecinos que viven ahí.
Sí, otra cosa. El developer que iba a comprar el 417, que ya ha hecho 3 casas en mi bloque.
The developer who's already done 4 houses on my block wants to buy 417.
Yo le expliqué el problema de la casa y él lo que me dijo fue que esas cosas pasaban. Eso fue todo lo que me dijo.
And I told him what happened, and he said these things happen. These are things that happen.
Well, there has to be somebody responsible for those things that happen, and there has to be consequences. So we will continue to work on those things as we progress through this legislation and continue to add to it.
Hay responsabilidad y hay consecuencias por los malos hechos y vamos a incorporar eso mientras que estamos desarrollando estas leyes.
Okay, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. The interpreter is going to sign off now. La intérprete tiene que irse.
Thank you.
Okay, adiosito. Muy buena suerte. Thank you and good luck.
Gracias.
Mr. McMonagle, you would read the next person to testify?
Yes, can we please have Michael Gonzalo Moran?
Michael, just state your
here.
name for the record, and then you can proceed with your testimony.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate everyone's time. And I'll go right into my testimony. The city's redevelopment plans, my name and well-being are irrelevant. But for the public and for the record, my name is Michael Gonzalo Moran, and I'm not doing too well. I'm supporting bill number 220008, and this bill will not serve my family. Our home is a lost cause. As you can see, it is structurally compromised. The damage has been done. I'm supporting this bill because it's a small step in the right direction, and no other family should have to experience it. Philadelphia's redevelopment plan prioritizes developers over its own tax-paying residents. Since the 90s, they have created tax abatement programs for developers. It wasn't until 20 years later that they considered their constituents with the Homestead Act. 20 plus years of advantages for developers and 20 plus years of gentrification and higher taxes for residents. The damage to my home is a direct result of Philadelphia's current redevelopment plan, and that plan is broken. Is it actually working as intended to gentrify? When developers are more encouraged than residents to invest in communities they don't live in, they don't consider what they destroy and subtract from the community. To them, a mistake is just part of the workday and the cost of doing business, while the current residents are impacted indefinitely. In 2018, a shady contractor was given city-approved permits to damage our home and to disturb our peace. Philadelphia has an office to assist with this, but where do I go as a resident for help? 4+ years I've been asking Philadelphia politicians for help to no avail. But early this year, a city department responded, and it was L&I. where they informed us that our home has been structurally compromised and we have to repair it or be fined. In the meantime, I've seen over 50 new structures go up within a half-mile radius of my home. As my home crumbles, I have no hope that this bill will help me and my family. My home will collapse before the city decides to do anything, but I'm here for those who have yet to be impacted. The struggle that people are experiencing with structurally compromised homes is stuff of nightmares. I grew up in a so-called tough and poor neighborhood. The neighborhood was so economically challenged that they referred to it as the Badlands. I thought I had it rough, but my 7-year-old is growing up in a more dangerous conditions, and I'm hoping to move my family before any other trauma occurs. I'll close my testimony with 2 statements and a rhetorical question. This is not redevelopment. This is gentrification. When my house collapses, I will be without a home and still have to pay a mortgage. Is the city of brotherly love being rebuilt just for the wealthy? Thank you.
Michael, thank you so much for your testimony. And, you know, we also have worked with CLS, and we're looking to advocate for additional funding for them in this current budget, so that while this legislation is moving forward, we know that there's a lot of challenges that people have and no resources to turn. Even when we heard from Ms. Mendez, we need to be able to help people in the meantime until we get legislation like this through, and make sure we tighten it up enough to put those protections in place. And your testimony really hits to the point of, you know, what we as elected officials should be doing and who are we representing. So I appreciate your testimony, and thank you for your courage to testify. And, you know, hopefully your challenges could be worked out, but also help prevent this from happening to other people in the future. So thank you. Mr. McMonagle, can you please read the next person to testify?
Can we please have Michelle Gaffney?
Michelle, just state your name for the record, and then you can continue with your testimony.
All right. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Michelle Gaffney. I'm a Philadelphia homeowner, and I'm here to testify on bill number 220008. I am a community advocate and a consultant for adjacent construction safety and residents' rights. I help victims to document, report, and seek solutions for construction damages caused by adjacent development projects. I'm a member of the Adjacent Construction Safety Coalition, which is composed of members from various neighborhood organizations and advocacy groups, currently including the River Wards L&I Coalition, North Squares Neighborhood Project and Community Alliance, and Community Action Network, the Philly Liberation Center, and more, in addition to individual community advocates like myself. We expect to continue to grow to include neighborhoods across all of the city's districts due to the widespread impact of construction damage on adjacent neighbors in Philadelphia. As you've already heard and will probably continue to hear through many of the testimonies today, residents across the city have been harmed at an alarming rate by unsafe adjacent construction work. When a resident's home is damaged by a developer, the city considers it to be a civil issue, meaning that the resident must win a legal suit in order to receive any kind of compensation for the impact of the damage. Most homeowners' insurance plans do not cover damages of this kind. Developers are not currently required to cover adjacent properties under their insurance. This often leaves residents holding the bill for thousands of dollars worth of repairs that occurred through no fault of their own. It is also a traumatizing experience that leaves lasting impacts on their financial and mental health. In my work, I've met with numerous residents of all backgrounds who have experienced similar patterns of disregard by negligent developers and contractors. By the time I end up working with a resident, they are already in crisis and have typically already tried to contact the developer next door with no response. In these kinds of cases, a careless developer will only respond once a lawyer has become involved. Bill number 220008 would make it mandatory for the developer to establish reliable communication with the resident before beginning their work, as more diligent developers already do. The bill would also ensure that the resident is provided with notice and information necessary for both parties to resolve minor issues before they have a chance to become major disputes. The learning curve for a resident who finds themselves embroiled in a construction dispute is steep, and oftentimes the resident doesn't know what to worry about until serious damage has already been done. In many cases, the victim lacks a full understanding of their rights to begin with. residents suddenly find themselves in an uphill battle that many do not have the means to fight, something that bad actors count on. Underserved residents without access to resources often get discouraged and give up. Predatory developers then take this opportunity to swoop in with a low cash offer on the residents' now damaged and devalued property. This cycle has been on repeat across the city and is actively displacing residents, harming established communities and neighborhoods. This is an issue that must be addressed on multiple fronts. Residents are already experiencing harm. They need help. But there are also countless future damages that can be prevented. The city also recently announced significant property tax increases, and the homeowners paying those taxes deserve concrete support in preserving the generational wealth that they hold in their homes. It's a civil issue is not a sufficient response from a government that relies on our tax contributions. The city must proactively reduce conditions that lead to adjacent construction damage, and this bill is an important step towards that goal. Please support Bill number 22008 and continue to build institutional support for longtime homeowners. Thank you, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Michelle, thank you for your testimony. And I just want to add, because of your advocacy and all the group's advocacy, is actually how this legislation was able to progress where it is. And knowing that we still have more work to do, you know, with the help of Venice and other folks, it really was brought to us from this advocacy from the residents in the community. So even though that, you know, we don't think it's perfect at this point, we know it's a launching pad, and we know that it's a way to start getting some much needed support for our residents in and around our communities. And so we appreciate it. We want you to continue what you're doing and your groups, you know, keep up the good work. And I think together we'll be able to, you know, help protect a lot of the people who need these support systems. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. McMonigal, can you please read the next person to testify?
Can we please have Jerome Wack?
Jerome, I do see you have a clouded screen there, but we do hear you. If you just want to state your name for the record, and then you can proceed with your testimony.
Yes, my name is Jerome Wack, Jerome Whack.
Please proceed with your testimony, okay?
Thank you. I listened patiently to the first witness, Ms. Mendez, and the second witness, Mr. Moran, and I sat here and I realized that I am in the identical same situation. My building is 1947 Christian Street, which is the northeast corner of 20th and Christian. I have lived in this neighborhood and I owned this building since 1986. Back then I had problems buying it because they said this neighborhood was a moral hazard. So I scraped the money together, purchased it, and basically fixed it up with loans and other things. The point is that late December 2019, the Archdiocese of Philadelphia sold St. Charles Roman Catholic Senior Citizen Center to a white gentrification developer. He ripped the senior citizen building down, which totally surrounds my building. I'm on the corner, and St. Charles basically ran from 1935 to 1945 Christian. I'm 1947. During the demolition in early 2020, the first thing that happened was a 25-foot, like 10-ton stone from the St. Charles Center was dropped against my south wall. The fire department was called, the Philadelphia police showed up, L&I showed up, and basically I was told that I should turn this into my insurance company if I have it, and the police would document this. Nothing else was done. I had a structural engineer come in prior to the demolition and construction, and he certified my building to be structurally sound. This was prior to the demolition. Since then, as the construction continued, there have been at least 5 major incidents where my building has been damaged. My patio was ripped into. The developer dug under it. He undermined my building to the point where I've called L&I at least 10 to 12 times. I have about 15 Philadelphia police reports. Every one of them states that my 911 call was founded and the property damage was done. I reached out to L&I many times. I wrote letters to the then L&I Commissioner, Mr. David Perry. I wrote a letter to the police commissioner regarding the conduct of the Philadelphia Police Department 17th District, who refused to do anything about this man. I wrote letters to the district attorney, all to have nothing at all done. Finally, July of 2021, I had to go into court, and I didn't have the money, but I went into court, found an attorney, and I got a temporary restraining order against this developer to stop him from digging under my building. I had a fear that my building would tip and fall just the way the Salvation Army did back in 2013. To make a long story short, the building continued. L&I, when they came, would meet with the developer. They would not meet with me. I called again to alert L&I supervisors about this, and they basically ignored my pleas of help. Fast forward to where we are now, I wound up going into court December of 2020 before a judge to once again stop this developer from attaching his building to my roof and the side of my building, on the adjoining building, without my permission, without contacting me, and without my consent. This man went anyway and connected a cricket to my roof. A cricket is a structure that bridges the gap between 2 adjoining buildings. I don't know if you gentlemen and ladies know that. The point is that judge ruled against him in court in December of 2020 not to do this. He did it anyway. After the judge ruled, I went up on my roof and I removed the cricket. I didn't do any damage. This developer went to the district attorney office here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The district attorney had me charged with 3rd-degree criminal mischief of my own building. I was on my roof when I removed this illegal structure. Needless to say, I've been in the city for over 65 years. I am a health professional. I've never been arrested in my life for anything, not even a misdemeanor. February 2nd, 2021, the district attorney's office had Detective Brian McCarthy at South Detectives arrest me. They told me to come in and turn myself in, or they're coming after me. So I did. I came in. I had to submit. I was searched. I was frisked. I was arrested and put in a COVID-infected jail until 18 hours later, the next day, when I was released on my own recognizance. Each month since February 2021 up to September of 2021, the district attorney delayed giving me a preliminary hearing. In May of 2021, I was asked to come into the district attorney's office down there by the old Wanamaker's building on 13th Street and have a meeting with the DA. Well, the DA's assistant showed up and she told me that I needed to allow this developer to come onto my patio and finish his work, or the DA would press charges against me and I should consider letting him on my property to finish his project, because they couldn't ensure me that a judge would be sympathetic to my point of view. So after hearing this, and I do have a witness, I have the ADA's name, and I have my attorney that was present, I told the DA, no deal. Take me before a judge and let a judge decide to see if I'm guilty of criminal mischief on my own building. So as it turned out, September 3rd, 2021, the district attorney decided not to prosecute me, to basically drop the charges against me. I had to apply once again at my own expense. I have no pension. I'm living on Social Security and now no savings, to put up like $500 and get my record expunged. Finally, my expungement came through December 5th, 2021. And as we speak, this developer went into my back patio, broke through the gate, set up scaffolding to finish the back part of his project. It ran from 1935 to 1945 Christian. He wrecked my central air conditioner compressor. I spent over $800 just to get it working again. There are no windows in this building on the first floor, and I cannot operate out of this building under these conditions. He did around $60,000 worth of damage to my patio with jackhammers and sledgehammers and other things. The police were called. A neighbor alerted me 6 o'clock in the morning, May 13, 2021. I rushed down here. I called 911. My neighbor called 911. Other neighbors came out of their houses, called 911. The Philadelphia police came. They caught this developer inside my patio through the gate, about 15 feet inside my property. And the Philadelphia police from the 17th district refused to arrest him. They refused to card the workers, at least get their names, their identities, to see if they were wanted. They refused. I videoed this. I have proof. I have cameras on my building, and I videoed it. And lastly, the same developer dropped a 15-foot steel I-beam, approximately 10 tons. It fell on the back of my patio, narrowly missed one of the ladies that live on the second floor, and it basically demolished my shed. I keep my snowblower and other tools that I need in there. L&I reluctantly did put a violation against this developer, but the next day the supervisor removed the violation. And what did L&I do for Jerome Wack? They left the violation against me. As we speak, that violation for my shed being wrecked remains against me. My gate that was wrecked by that developer and did not allow myself access or egress to my building still remains against me. L&I has done a horrible disservice to longtime residents of the city of Philadelphia. The notion that L&I is responsible to the developer and the police are responsible to the developer who lavishes them with gratuities should not be. I am in great support of Bill 222-008, and there's very little that can be done for me now. The damage has been done, and he's about wrecked my life and my business. But maybe L&I and the distinguished council people in this city will stop this once and for all. And last, I have requested, since I read an article the 30th of May, which was Monday, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Mr. Bennett, wrote an article about the shortages of L&I inspectors in the city of Philadelphia. As I understand it, there are less than there are 50 down. People have left, quit, and just do not want to join because of the measures of corruption and mangling that goes on in that department. I ask you to consider, since this city does not have sufficient L&I inspectors to monitor projects, why are they still issuing permits to build them? There should be a moratorium issued today against any structure being built in the city of Philadelphia until L&I is up to speed to properly monitor these developers that's doing this kind of damage. How can you issue a permit for a person to build a building and with no kind of measures to ensure that they are doing what they're supposed to do? How does someone complain 12, 15 times with all of these complaints, violations on the books, and L&I does not shut the project down? So today I ask you to please give your support to Bill 222-008. Bless you, and I hope that Finally, city council and license inspection will go back to the way it should be. That is giving support to the longtime residents of Philadelphia and not white gentrifying developers, because this is what this is all about. It's about money. It's the systematic pushing of poor people and Black people out of their homes. This is not New York City. This is the city of Philadelphia. It's neighborhoods, it's people, it's families. These people came here only to reap the benefits of all the years that longtime residents like myself have lived here, went to school here, raised their families, bought cars, refrigerators, and homes. They're reaping the benefit, and we are being severely damaged. We're being wrecked. So that's my request today. And everything I've spoken about, I can produce the letters. I can produce over 12 Philadelphia police reports, a structural engineer. I have the reports from L&I where violations were placed against me and this developer. And of course, they removed the violation from the developer and left it against me. My violations are in place today. His has been removed by supervisors. Any questions, any documentation required, I have it at my disposal and you'll get it within the next 20 minutes. Thank you.
Jerome, I would like to say that, we appreciated your testimony, but it just goes to show you the lack of effort the city has put into protections for our residents. And as you can see, the advocacy is coming from people who have suffered through this, and your advocacy and your suffering will hopefully help us deal with this in the future. But there's no excuse of why this is allowed to continue and why we put the onus on the property owner to resolve these issues on their own when the damage is being done by a developer who is receiving permits from the city of Philadelphia. And that's why it's also important for us to partner with CLS and others to at least provide support for these individuals who cannot do this on their own, and we shouldn't expect them to do this on their own. So, I mean, it's very disheartening of what's happening, and we've heard it time and time again. But we do appreciate your testimony because it does give us the purpose of moving forward with this legislation. And I want to thank you for your testimony. And Venice did forward me some information on your specific case. So I do have that. So just thank you for being there. Thank you for continuing to pursue this. And thank you for fighting for your rights, because they are your rights and this is your property. And I think it's a perfect time to segue into the next person to testify, and Drew Miller from CLS, who has been an advocate in helping, and we're trying to work with him even to give them additional resources to help people like yourselves to go through go through these situations. So thank you for your testimony. Drew, if you're available, if you want to state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony, it'd be much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Drew Miller, and I'm a paralegal at Community Legal Services in the Homeownership and Consumer Rights Unit. I'm pleased to testify in support of Bill 220008 today and help protect Philadelphia's row home neighborhoods. As the committee knows, Community Legal Services is a nonprofit legal aid office that provides free legal representation to low-income Philadelphians. We represent clients with a variety of civil legal matters, including home ownership issues. Philadelphia prides itself for being a city of homeowners, with 52% of Philadelphia households owning their homes. A significant portion of these households, including all of our clients, are low income. But the American dream of homeownership is under attack for many of our clients, with skyrocketing home values, competition from all-cash private investors, and equity-stripping schemers such as predatory residential property wholesaling industry. That is why preserving intergenerational family homes for our clients is so important. Stories like Ms. Mendez and the others who have spoken today are all too common, and we hear the same from our clients. Since the summer of 2019, CLS has experienced a significant increase in clients seeking assistance because construction in their tight neighborhoods was damaging their own homes. This mirrors what our community partners in rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods have communicated to us. Too often, this demolition and construction is done carelessly and by less than reputable contractors. All the while, neighboring homeowners are largely left out of the process until something goes wrong. Foundations have been undermined, party walls were damaged, partially collapsed, and left exposed to water intrusion. Contractors trespassed on the next door property without permission, damaging roofs, porches, and backyards in the process. Next door homes shifted so windows and doors no longer opened or closed properly. Brick facades tumbled off homes. In some of the worst cases, damage from adjacent construction resulted in the evacuation and condemnation of the next door home for safety reasons. Innocent longtime homeowners have experienced months of harassment and are too often being forced out of their homes. Because many longtime homeowners do not have homeowners insurance or have insurance policies that preclude claims for damage caused by negligent adjacent construction, the only recourse is to hire an attorney and sue for damages. However, this option is largely out of reach. After decades of disinvestment in some communities, construction in residential neighborhoods may create needed housing and other amenities. However, the development must be done carefully and conscientiously to limit harm to existing neighbors and neighborhoods. Working with our clients, CLS has found that due diligence and basic communication in advance encourages the safest outcomes. Bill 220008 will require builders to conduct a pre-construction survey of adjacent property that may be impacted by construction or demolition and document the existing conditions of the adjacent properties. It will also ensure the timely notification of adjacent neighbors so they are given the opportunity to know their rights before this construction begins. This early communication will enable both builders and adjacent neighbors to plan appropriately before immediate needs arise. On behalf of CLS and our clients, we want to thank Councilmember Squilla and Councilmember Dom for co-sponsoring this legislation. We ask that you support Bill 220008 to help protect Philadelphia row home neighborhoods. Thank you.
Drew, thank you so much. And I just have one question for you, in that you have helped some property owners on this, but to do a pilot program to really put this into perspective, you would probably need additional resources to do that. We on council, would love to get support from all our members to do this. And do you believe with additional resources you'll be able to help, at least until we get this up and running, help more residents who are suffering from this? Because now that this is a public hearing and on the record, we'll have more people reaching out to CLS when it happens to their properties, and you're going to be overwhelmed and not be able to provide it. So what do you think the ability is to be able to get a pilot, and how many people do you think you would be able to help if this pilot was able to be up and running?
Right now, the biggest concern is the work we've been doing. We're not funded for at the moment. We've just found the need, and we're doing our best to meet the need with the already limited time that we have. So if we had targeted funding for this, that would exponentially change what we're able to do at this stage.
I mean, not that we want people to go through this problem, or but we know we need the support, especially now for a lot of the folks that are doing this on their own. And as you heard from some of the people testifying, the devastating effects on their home and what it does to them, not only about their home, but their emotional well-being and their mental health. And it's a damage all the way around. And, to us as a city to put it off and say, you know what, this is a civil matter, go hire an attorney and do it on your own is just not feasible. So we appreciate your support, what you have given to us without the resources necessary to do that. But we as a city also need to step up and help the people who are in need. So thank you for your testimony, and thank you for what you were doing. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. And we're more than happy to work with you and other council members to figure out a proper path forward. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mr. McMonagle, do you want to read the next person to testify?
Yes, can we please have, I believe it's pronounced Ida Castro?
You got that right. Thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee on this important bill. Chairperson Squilla, thank you for not only chairing the committee in the hearing, but also being the main sponsor of this bill. My name, as stated, is Ida Castro, and I'm a current resident of District 1. I live pretty close by also to Norris Square, and I came to this neighborhood because of its diversity. I did not hope to change anything as a Latina. I was hoping to come back and join a community that I've known for many, many years. I am also an active member of the Adjacent Construction Safety Coalition, currently comprised of multiple neighborhood and advocacy organizations and individual residents of Districts 1, 5, and 7 here in the city. The myriad concerns over growing numbers of victims, some of which had the opportunity to testify today, affected by the incredible number of construction permits being issued throughout older neighborhoods, support the need to address adjacent construction issues via this bill. Information is critical in order to be able to address and basically enforce your rights. However, I'm concerned the key issues remain unaddressed, leaving the victims that you've already heard about, but many, many more that have not had the opportunity to come forward, to basically be at the mercy of people with no mercy, the builders that have been negligent, the builders that don't care about the damage that's being done, leaving people with damaged homes, and even leaving people homeless. The city continues to issue breathtaking numbers of construction permits with requirements easily met by individuals with limited or no construction experience, as well as individuals who have repeated claims or complaints against them. Pew Research noted that in 2021 alone, over 26,000 permits were issued, over 5 times the amount issued in 2020. This factor alone increases the possibility of harming innocent homeowners. In addition, I just learned that there is support for another bill that will allow LNI to extend the time for the permits already issued. And I'm hoping that the requirements of 220008 are imposed on those extensions. Otherwise, we are just creating another huge group of families that may be affected and not benefit, right, from this important bill. Only too often, as you've heard, demolitions or excavations result in irreparable or costly harm to neighbors who can ill afford the precious few attorneys that could help them with their expertise. In the meantime, builders pay insurance costs that indemnify them while leaving families homeless or living in precarious conditions. It is surprising to me that up to date, the city has yet to address the tragic results before this bill. So again, congratulations. I hope that this bill is amended to include safeguards for those who need it the most in a meaningful way. While this bill offers important information to those potentially affected, it does not include rights or processes to redress such wrongdoing. I have met too many families that cannot afford to repair their homes or hire attorneys to avail themselves of possible tort law coverage. So, information is useful, but not enough. For example, the city itself properly protects its interest against such events by requiring reviews by structural engineers, bonding, $300,000 or more, prior to the issuing of a permit. Similar requirements should be afforded to homeowners and residents, requiring structural engineers to review and approve the issuance of permits and including insurance coverage up to $1 million for the named neighbors, and that would include residents as well as owners, would begin to address these concerns. Victims could then just file the claims and resolve matters without need of court intervention. The city could also treat homes that are 50 years or older as they treat historic designated properties to ensure builders take adequate care to prevent damage to older structures and preserve our neighborhood integrity. Currently, L&I offers no protections to victims of adjacent construction loss. Indeed, as you heard, oftentimes when the damage occurs, citizens mistakenly call L&I seeking help, only to find themselves fined or ejected from their own homes by L&I. If they are lucky, builders may receive a fine, one they can easily pay as cost of doing business. The victim, our neighbor, is left with the loss of their home, a home they worked a lifetime to pay. Now, without time left to recuperate, they face starting over again without a legacy for their children. Homes provide working people the opportunity to build some wealth. Failure to protect this well-earned right affects generations. Our neighbors deserve better. Please add the rights and necessary resources to enforce these protections to this otherwise very helpful bill. I am hopeful that the suggestions made provide a useful pathway to provide the quality of life all of our city residents and property owners deserve. I also hope that you consider the creation of a fund that would permit those victimized, at least within the last 3 years and before 2023, by the loss of their homes to seek the redress they so deserve. Thank you for your time and consideration of my remarks. And I'm truly hopeful that this bill will pass and will be enriched and improved.
Well, thank you, Ida, for your testimony, and know for sure that this will be a continued work in progress as we continue to add more stipulations to this legislation. But also, any new extended permit or any new permit that will be required to abide by this legislation once passed, and it's important. That's why we wanted to try to get this passed out before the summer recess. And that's why we will continue to work on some of your ideas and others that were presented to us as we move forward in possible future changes to the bill. But thank you. We understand the concerns. But again, it's people like you and your ideas that enable us to move forward with legislation like this. So thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have Clarice Brooks, if you're available. Clarice is not still on.
Hello.
We have Robert and Tina Gilmore.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, this is Clarice Brooks.
Oh, how are you? Okay. Just state your name for the record, and then you can proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Clarice Brooks. I live in the 5th District Council, 1400 block of North 7th Street. And I'm here speaking on the support the bill 22008.
Please proceed.
Oh, okay. During my experience with demolition and construction, we really need to have this bill because I didn't know the things that the developers couldn't do to you, or my rights, or what they could do to you. And the developers, they come at you like they're rich, you're poor, you don't matter, and that's how they make you feel, and they disrespect you, and they disrespect your property. And when I had to go through that, at first I didn't have no one to turn to. Then I joined a nice group of people that started helping me and teaching me and informing me on things that that I need to know that I didn't know. So I really support this bill because I felt very alone, and a lot of people probably feel like that. And older people, they don't know their rights or anything, and developers do lie and say they send you mail that they don't send you, and then they come and they do things to your house. Right now, I have a hole from where they took a house down next door from me, started to underpin my house illegally, and now the hole and the dirt is eroding from my house, and now my house is kind of in danger because it's a big giant hole where the dirt from the wall that they took down my wall, and now the dirt is eroding. Now my wall is in danger, and it's things like this, and people don't know nothing about it, and if they're older, they really don't know, and sometimes they're children and grandchildren. So I'm just here to support the bill 22008, hoping that it will help others be prepared for things like this, and that the city will have our back and stop letting people that come in. We live here all our life. We pay our taxes. We love Philadelphia, and they letting people come in and mistreat us. And I really think that this bill will help a lot of people to be more informed and more aware of their rights. Because, like I said, developers tend to they throw in your face they have more money than you. So it's like you're not important. So this bill will really help people, and I really support this bill.
Thank you. And thank you for your testimony. It's important to hear from the residents. And I know we could have had 100 more people come in and testify today on the challenges that they had from this issue and problem that's going on in the city. So much appreciate your testimony. Robert or Tina Gilmore, are you available? If not, we have Deborah Scoblink-King. I know it's been a long hearing, and some people may have disconnected. Mr. McMonagle, is there anybody else to testify? Okay, hearing none. Is there any other questions from members or any questions from anybody on bill number 220008? I did see a question. Michelle, do you have a question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I just wanted to put on the record a comment in support of additional resources for community legal services per your question to Drew earlier in the testimony. I have worked with community legal services on cases, and just to reiterate, they are taking on these kinds of cases and stretching themselves beyond the resources that they've been given out of the goodness of their heart. Folks like myself who are self-taught advocates are doing our best to fill the gap in services and support that has not been provided for residents. And the necessity for funding for CLS is significant. And you can even speak with folks at Philly Legal Assistance and other organizations that provide legal services, and they will also tell you that they receive these kinds of requests frequently, and they have to turn people away or try to refer them out to pro bono volunteers who are few and far between. And if there is someone who has the expertise you need, it's likely they have a conflict of interest because they already represent a developer or a contractor on the other side of the coin. So again, just supporting CLS receiving additional resources to create a department to or a pilot program to address these issues.
Thank you for your support, Michelle. Much appreciated. Also, and I apologize, we did skip over Mary from to testify. Mary, just sorry for that. If you want to just state your name for the record, and then you can proceed with your testimony.
Hi, no problem. My name is Mary Collins. Okay. My name is Mary Collins. I'm the operations manager with U.S. Construction. I'm testifying today in my role as co-chair of the Government Affairs Committee for the Building Industry Association of Philadelphia. I want to thank Councilmember Squilla and the members of the committee for allowing me to testify today. The BIA is a trade association.
Please leave your message for.
Is a trade association of mostly residential developers working throughout Philadelphia. And we encourage all of our members and all builders to be good neighbors during construction. We recognize that improved communication can be beneficial and that many aspects of this bill will enable the city to better compel builders to reach that standard. We appreciate that Councilmember Squilla and representatives of the Department of Licenses and Inspections met with us to hear and address our concerns. There are a few remaining considerations that I would like to provide comment on today. With regards to permanent weatherproofing, we would like to suggest that in the event that there's a large project, poor weather conditions, or a complicated demolition that is still in progress when the deadline for permanent weatherproofing approaches, that L&I plan for and consider a process to address those circumstances so that the permanent installation can be safely installed. We would also like to comment on the initial notification timeframes. The BIA understands L&I's intention to compel builders to make all best efforts to gain confirmation of the project notification from adjacent neighbors. As the bill is currently written, if an adjacent neighbor refuses to sign confirmation or is otherwise unresponsive, the building permit would not be issued sooner than 60 days from the date of application. While this time frame does allow for L&I to provide additional notification of the project, BIA believes that this waiting period is unnecessarily long if proof can be presented showing that attempts to communicate with adjacent neighbors in good faith were made in advance of the application date. And with final notification, the BIA appreciates and supports an amendment to allow for the 10-day final notification period to run concurrently with permit review, as opposed to the originally drafted 10 days after permit issuance. And the BIA understands that there are builders who conduct themselves in an inconsiderate, harmful, or even dangerous manner. And we truly believe that property owners in our city should be reasonably protected from damage and undue disruption. However, the members of the development community who would best champion and abide by the measures of this bill already adhere to their own versions of such best practices. So there are times when responsible builders contact an adjacent neighbor in earnest and are met with hostility or a refusal to cooperate, even if the builder is seeking to perform work that will benefit or protect the adjacent property. So we would encourage efforts to aid builders in properly completing construction with adequate waterproofing and other protections that may require access to an adjacent property. These builders need to be able to perform their project safely and successfully. So we urge the city to consider additional common sense measures that would assist in circumstances where the neighbor refuses to allow access for code required waterproofing or other elements that would ultimately protect both buildings. The BEIA is sincere in its desire to be a part of the solution, and we believe in helping to create a solution that will work for everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today.
Mary, thank you for your testimony. And I think what we found out during this process too is if the information and contact is before development, there's a lot more willingness for people to work with developers and people doing work on their house, not after the fact that damage is already done and we created this animosity between the homeowner and the developer. So I think what this bill is actually looking to do is hopefully prevent and create that dialogue ahead of time. And yes, again, it's not going to be perfect. And yes, again, there will be some challenges along the way. But again, this is a starting point because that proactive dialogue helps people feel comfortable who they're dealing with and knowing that those people would also need to be held accountable for challenges, or because you could even have a good developer who's doing a great job and have an accident happen. And the intent was not to do something wrong, but there still has to be some accountability by that developer. So we would continue to work with you and appreciate your input and services, and knowing that, the main purpose is to protect not only your development, but protect the development that's going on next door and the residents that are being impacted by that. So thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Seeing none, hearing no further questions from members or last panel, there will be no other panels to testify. We'll take a brief break to connect any of those people who wish to give public testimony for the bills before the committee today. Mr. McMonagle, will you please call the first public contact, or maybe council support? Do we have any other people who are willing to put public comment on the record?
Mr. Chair, we have one more participant. We're having a problem connecting. I'm going to try one more time.
Okay, thank you. In the meantime, I see Michelle has her hand up. If you want to, did you want to make another comment, Michelle?
Yes, I just wanted to put on the record that I would
Hello?
prefer.
Hello?
Go ahead, Michelle, while they're connecting.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to state for the record that residents have been asked for years to give the benefit of the doubt to developers doing the right thing, to hope that they do the right thing, to hope that they get a good developer. I think that it would be the least that the developer community can do to agree wholesale to these new requirements as a show of good faith. The reason why you get hostility from residents is because of years and years and years of harm. So a resident acting defensively is because of the history that's been created by the development industry and participants in that industry. So it is time for the development industry to put in the work to build good relationships and rebuild the faith of the community that they have their best interests at heart and that they are going to be careful and mindful of their property. So while I am sympathetic to the fact that some residents are very bristly and difficult to speak with, I'm a transplant who lived in Brooklyn. I understand what it's like to try to break through that ice and forge genuine relationships with legacy residents and generational residents of Philadelphia, but you can do it and it's worth the effort. And I believe that our residents deserve the effort from the development community who's been reaping benefit after benefit for years off of our pain. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and agreed. And we're hoping this legislation will hopefully have the good developers work with us and have the developers who don't have good intentions have to work with us. And that's the goal. So we do have one public comment, I believe. I think you are connected now. You just want to state your name for the record, and then you can proceed with your testimony.
Yes, this is Robert Gilmore, Robert and Tina Gilmore.
All right. Thank you for being here to testify. Just proceed with your testimony.
Yes, thank you very much. We live in the 1400 block of Parish Street, and we are surrounded by two projects, one that's completed and another that is underway. The first one is on the 800 block of North Broad Street, and the other one is a 30 apartment complex that is immediately next door to this project, the first completed project. Because of where we live, my wife and I are senior citizens, and we've known that this type of these projects were going to take place a couple of years ago, and it gave us great anxiety because we had been watching how some of these houses had been collapsing throughout the city due to, I guess, unqualified contractors or contractors doing things that they had no business doing. But before I go any further, there are two of your people on your committee here that I'd like to thank, and one, the first one is Ms. Venice Whitaker, constituent relations representative from the city council president's office, and Mr. Drew Miller as well. They both have been very instrumental in helping my wife and I navigate through these very trying times. We are very much in support of 220008 that the city is analyzing and hopefully will be signed into law, because as some of the previous guests have stated, a lot of the people, the developers who come in the city are flush with cash and wealth, and they treat people, the homeowners who may have been here. As a matter of fact, our family has been here for over 60 years in this house. And the house itself was built in 1916. So it's very fragile. We were also very fortunate, in our case, we were very fortunate with the first developer, because he was a decent individual, and actually through the guidance of Drew Miller and Mrs. Venice Whitaker, who helped us professionally and with advice, we were able to get an insurance policy through the developer for the duration of the project. And so that worked out well for us and took a lot of anxiety from my wife and myself. Now, the second, this project that's being built, the 30 apartment complex that's being built directly behind our home, and will be adjoining our property up against it in the backyard. This gentleman, this developer, is a nasty, very nasty person, and he's knocked holes in the side of our wall without, saying, for various reasons. And I had confrontations with this man. And it just has been a nightmare. So while they were laying the foundation for this 30 apartment complex, our kitchen collapsed. Now, we were able to, from this gentleman as well, able to get an insurance policy actually was over last month. So when that happened, and by the grace of the contractor that laid the foundation, he assured me that they would rebuild our kitchen immediately, and they did so. However, 220008 is definitely necessary because the citizens of Philadelphia need to be protected. We have people that come in from all different countries of the world. The gentleman who's building this 30 apartment complex is from Russia, and he talked to my wife and I very disrespectfully, and talked to us like we got no respect from this person. So this 220008 is definitely necessary, and it's nothing worse than you've lived here all your life. You're senior citizens now. We pay taxes all our life. We would think that the city would have our backs and protect us, because we've seen too many houses collapse where a lot of people were low income and weren't able to have homeowners insurance and were left homeless. So I wanted to thank the city council, all of you, for taking this up, and hopefully it will pass. We appreciate every effort that you're giving, and if there's anything else that my wife and I can do in the future in reference to testifying or anything else for that matter, we'll be happy to do so. So thank you again. God bless you, and thanks.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
That would complete our testifier. Oh, I see Debbie King. You're muted, Deb. If you want to unmute, state your name for the record, then you could give your testimony.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you now.
Okay, great. My name is Debbie King, and I live in Northern Liberties. But 20 years ago, I didn't live in Northern Liberties, but my then boyfriend had a building. And when a developer bought the property next to him, he wrote a letter welcoming him to the community and informing him that there was a situation between our building and the next one that he had to understand when he was going to demolish the property next to us. So he came back to us and said, of course, he would do everything to protect our property. And then he befriended my husband. He brought his bankers through. We were really looking forward to working with him. And then when he began to demolish it, he met with the contractor, and they discussed how they were going to do the demolition. And then Memorial Day weekend 2002, they began demolishing it with no permits and not in the method that would protect our property, and it caused severe damage. So we went on for 5 years trying to get it fixed. They had a stop work order issued, and then they came back and tried to do it again in violation of the stop work order. It was a nightmare that you can't imagine. I wish that these protections had been in place then, because we had to sue the developer and his contractor, and it cost us over $100,000 for the engineers and the attorney's fees. That my husband's an artist. He did this through his artwork. I can't even begin to talk about how it affected our lives. And thank you for putting these protections in place. I hope you pass it. Thank you. I wish I could go on, but
I'm sure, and I'm sure you heard some of the other stories that.
I didn't. No, I wish I had. I wish I'd been able to join earlier. I just came in about 20 minutes ago.
Okay. And a lot of people were in your same position and same place, and knowing that we as a city weren't there to protect them is difficult. So hopefully, with your continued advocacy and advocacy of others, we will pass this legislation and enable it to help others in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, seeing that there's no others to testify, we will now conclude the hearing and go into our public meeting. There being no further questions from members of the committee and no other witnesses to testify, I'll ask that anyone else. So we want to thank all the panels and the witnesses for the participation today. We value your opinions. I now invite all the panelists and witnesses to please disconnect from the meeting before we go into our public meeting. We will now pause the proceedings briefly as multiple participants leave the hearing. Once the participants leave the hearing, we will go into a public meeting to work on passing these bills out of this committee. Thank you. Okay, it seems all people have left the hearing. This will conclude the public hearing of the committee. We will now go into a public meeting to consider the actions to be taken on the bills before this committee today. Now, as we complete the public meeting, I think Councilmember Jones, somebody has their mic unmuted. Mr. McGonigal, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that you are present as we are now into our public meeting.
Councilman Dom?
Good afternoon. I am present.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and colleagues. I am present.
Councilman Johnson? Councilman Jones? Councilman O? Councilman Squilla?
I am present.
It's Ann's speaker. Councilwoman or Councilman Jones? Councilman O? We need one more.
They're both present. We just need them to We're waiting for one more member, Councilmember Dom, just to.
No problem. I'm enjoying the birthday of Sean. That's no problem.
He looks great, don't he?
Yeah. Was he 27 today?
56.
Oh my God.
I love you, Councilman Dom. Can I come to work for you? The other one just aged me 5 years.
Mr. Chair, I'm present.
Thank you. Thank you, council member. So we now have a quorum.
Yes, we do. With Councilwoman Gim, yes. Thank you.
All right, we now start our public meeting. We will now go into the meeting, and the chair will recognize Councilmember Dom for a motion on the amendment to bill number 220008.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer an amendment to bill number 220008. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee and move that the amendment to bill number 220008 be approved.
Second.
All right, the bill has been moved and seconded by Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. All those in favor, it has been moved and the amendment to bill number 220008 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries, and amendment to bill number 220008 has been approved. The chair recognizes Councilmember Dom for a motion on bill number 220008 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number 220008 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Note that Councilmember Gilmore Richardson is seconded. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 220008 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair now recognizes Councilmember Dom again for a motion on bill number 220384.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number 220384 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Second.
Note for the record, the bill has been seconded by Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 220384 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Bill number 220384 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council. Chair recognizes Councilmember Dom for a motion on bill number 220415.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number 220415 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Was that Councilmember O?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. And note for the record that Councilmember O was also present for the meeting. And Gilmore Richards is also present. Chair notes for the record that Councilmember O seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 220415 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Bill number 220415 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council. Thank you so much for everybody for participating and hanging in there during the hearing and the meeting. This will conclude the business for the Committee on Commerce on L&I, and everybody have a great day. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, have a good day.